Chairman, and I want to thank the witnesses for their testimony today and their years of service and helping members of Congress understand some of these very difficult issues. Dr. Kagan, your of Paradise and Power was one of the most insightful books I've ever read. So I'm not sure that's saying much, but for me, but it was a great book, so thanks. I want to follow up on Senator Graham's questions. Also, Mr. Brimley, I actually really appreciate your point about cyber, how it, can become the bright, shiny object that every service is pursuing and forgetting their comparative advantages. I think that's a really important point. A number of us had breakfast with the Commandant this morning and at the Marine Corps, and that came up. But with regard to, I want to go back to North Korea and the issue of, one of the concerns that we clearly have is that within the next 2 to 3 to 4 or 5 years, and nobody's sure when, but it's certainly going to happen, is that they're going to have an intercontinental ballistic missile that's likely going to be able to range the continental United States, or already probably close to ranging my state of Alaska and Hawaii. But in the concern I have, along the lines of what Senator Graham was saying, is that the American people are going to wake up whenever that happens, and all of a sudden, it's going to be in the news, and it's going to be wild reports, and, the president has to do something. If we know that's coming, and it is coming, my view is, and I'm wondering what your view is, that we should be doing a lot more on missile defense. Because if, let's say he's able to get, let's say he is an irrational actor, and let's say he has the ability to launch 1 or 2, and we have a very robust missile defense, we'll be able to confidently shoot that down, retaliate massively, which should be really strong deterrence. So can you just comment on that, but more broadly, just on North Korea, all three of you? I'm really struck by, obviously President Obama's strategic patience was a nice phrase, but didn't do anything. And this is going to be a really, really big issue, maybe for this administration. You're already seeing the concerns we have here. But if we know that in 1 to 5 years, this guy, who's not very stable, is going to be able to range our country with an intercontinental ballistic nuclear missile, shouldn't we be doing something right now, missile defense or otherwise?
Well, we are doing missile defense to a certain degree.
Yeah, but it's not nearly as strong.
And some of it is in your state. I think what the new administration has to do is take a look at that threat that we're discussing, and also, a rogue actor not trying to destroy the United States, but firing a couple of missiles at the United States for some motivating reason. Is it appropriate that we have a capability to defend against that? A number of years ago, we identified Iran as a potential actor that could do something like that, and also North Korea. And we began to put in place a missile defense strategy to deal with that. Now, we pulled it out of Europe as a part of the ridiculous reset we did with the Russians, a major concession we made to them. I think this should be on the table with the new administration when they're looking at a national security strategy in dealing with both of those actors along this line, because I'm convinced the Iranians are going to get a nuclear weapon, and also what North Korea has to this day. And I agree with, I think what you were feeding back to me is that missile defense infrastructure we have is not adequate. So let's take a look at what would take to make it adequate, see what the investment strategy is, and see if that is a priority that we want to make. I would admit it is.
And wouldn't that buy time for the president, whoever that, if it's President Trump, when this becomes the big news in 2 years, oh my goodness, he can range Chicago with a nuke. If we have a strong missile defense, the president's going to have some additional options that he might not have if we don't have anything, or if we have a weak one like we do now.
No, Senator, I agree. I worry deeply about the nature of the regime, and if we see the mating of a nuclear capability with, say, a KN-08 or one of the variants, I think that's deeply concerning. And I think it's not just missile defense, it's comprehensive ISR architecture, and frankly, it's both of those things forward deployed in places like South Korea and Japan and other places And this gets back to the alliances and partnerships question. I mean, the missile defense and forward deployed missile defense and all the concepts of operations and communications that it requires with allies and partners ought to be a focus of the next defense strategy for sure.
Dr. Kagan?
Well, this is a way, my answer it answers a lot of the things that have been raised, including this issue, including space, including cyber, which is that we have been living in a series of delusions for years that somehow all these countries are not going to develop every capability they can possibly develop. And we have been holding off or slowing down or not moving sufficiently quickly to develop the capabilities to stay ahead of their capabilities. So we slowed down, I think, dumbed down our missile defense efforts because we decided it was somehow a violation of one thing or another, and that was just foolish. And I don't know, you guys know better than I do, whether he can build an ICBM faster than we can build the missile defense capability necessary to deal with it, but yes. And we ought to be, and by the way, that will be useful in dealing with China too. I mean, I've always felt that one of the major ways to get the Chinese to put pressure on North Korea is for us to build up capabilities that have direct implications for Chinese strategic interests. So a missile defense capability that we build up in response to Korea will also affect China's nuclear force. And that gives them more incentive than any of these other efforts we've been making to try to push. So I would say full speed ahead. But what I don't know as a technical matter is, what does full speed ahead mean when we have been artificially capping what we even are trying to do?
Well, it means more than we're doing now.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cruz.